and it drive a lot of traffic to the website overall. So those are just important measurements when we look at it. It's not always a return on ad spend. While we do know that we like people to buy on Garmin.com, one, because we just want to make it easier for the consumer to part with their money. But two, we make a little bit more money on Garmin.com than we do if we sell through a traditional retailer like, a Bass Pro or a West Marine. But at the end of the day, we really don't care where somebody buys them or buys products. So while we do track return on ad spend, really my biggest goal is just to drive traffic to the website. And I know if I'm driving traffic to the site, we're certainly driving sales overall for the company, whether it's on Garmin.com or through any of our great retail partners.
Yeah, which makes sense. And obviously, right now in the marine industry and the fishing industry, sales, are, with everybody trying to get outdoors and escape this environment that we're in, have seen a huge growth compared to last year. That's for sure. Christina, the same question with you, with your brands that you manage, the interaction rates this year compared to last year. How are you seeing that?
Sure. So we definitely take a very analytical approach in a month-by-month scenario. So we've seen over 300% growth of engagement across our channels, which is really, really important, right? So if you think about it, your social media is basically your digital billboard. It is such a high touch point to connect with your consumers and your customers and to provide them really valuable information to inspire them, enable them, and really challenge them to fish more. So by interacting with our consumers and really focusing on engagement and managing our community, we've definitely seen a really, really heavy increase of building that relationship, right? It's all about those relationships, and it's allowing your customers not only to interact with your brand, but to also interact with like-minded individuals who like your brand as well. So not only does engagement serve you as a brand, it's also serving your consumer and your customers at the end of the day by allowing them a platform to interact.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
When it comes to,
you guys have so many. You guys have a lot of brands. How do you manage, doing that between all your brands?
Yeah, it's a lot, right? I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. For us, what's really, really important is having dedicated staff members that not only walk the walk, but talk the talk, and having a community manager who's really in the trenches, right? They're acting as an extension for customer service and then also helping build that brand voice as well. So, it's a case-by-case scenario when you're dealing with the large volume that an organization like Pure Fishing deals with. You really have to be smart about where you invest your time and energy, and then also make sure at the end of the day you're providing the most value to your consumers. So it's a lot of prioritization, and then making sure you're just keeping your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Adding value, educating versus selling, and everything. And I know having a voice in a brand is really important, and not just that upfront selling. And William, you guys over at PowerPole, you guys have always been at the forefront for a long time on having a voice for a brand. Talk to us a little bit about customer interaction on your pages.
So PowerPole is actually a pretty interesting brand for us on social media, because we don't specifically correlate our social media with our sales all the time. We're very dealer driven. Like our end goal is to get somebody in a dealer, hands-on product, and make the sale at the dealer more so than our website. So in terms of that, it makes it a lot harder for us to quantify our return on investment. So when we look at social media, when we look at ad campaigns and stuff, it's a lot less how many sales and a lot more focused on those interactions and the connections that we are having with the individuals. Because not only are we trying to drive sales, but we're also building a community, and that's a big factor of what we try to do on social media. It's not we're just trying to sell you an anchor. It's once you have that anchor, we want you in our community, and we want to talk to you. We want you to be talking to other anchor owners, and vice versa. So for us, it's more of a platform for us to connect with owners, and then it's an opportunity for current owners to encourage people that don't have an anchor to jump in, because they're so excited about their product. They're so excited about our product that it's contagious, and then everybody wants one. So it's pretty great. I love it.
Exactly. It's like the three R's that we talk about in the fishing industry, is the recruitment, the retainment, and the re-engagement side of it and everything. And it's how you get them in that funnel, whether you're a small mom and pop, tackle dealer, or you're an apparel company, or you're like you and your product and my product, where we're an accessory to a final product. You need that boat before you can come to us for an outboard, or for you for a shallow water anchoring system, right there. So I think we also had Pete Angle join with us, and Pete, let's see.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you. We can hear you. We're talking about right now basically how customer interaction has changed the social landscape and the importance of customer interaction online, and the growth that you've seen on it. Can you talk to us a little bit about that on the hook side of things?
Sure. Obviously, we've seen tremendous growth recently, quite due to the pandemic, not only in engagement, but through our customer service network. And more people obviously were stuck at home with the ability to shop at retail, which opened up a lot of dialogue through social and customer service. And we saw, online and mobile shopping thrive, quite honestly, and more activity on our social media accounts. And, our social team took advantage and began to activate with unique content to engage with them, but also, to keep our brand relevant. And I would say that we spend most of the time just trying to engage, ask the consumer questions, and stay in communication with them through, and still are doing so today. That's been the most successful way to interact with them outside of just posting content. Making them a part of the community for us has been the focus.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me into my next question with everybody is, and Pete, we can start with you. How did your brand approach? Give us kind of like a timeline of thought process on your brand approaching the business through this crisis. And for example, at Yamaha, just like a lot of brands, at first we all kind of just stopped and took a breath, and we have what we like to call a crawl, walk, run mentality. And we wanted to kind of take an assessment of the situation. While we all want everybody to get out on the water, we all have to, be responsible brands.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was pretty abrupt for us. I mean, I don't think we were quite prepared for what happened. From a retail standpoint, we were receiving cancellations because the stores were closed and inventory was kind of piling up. And then it was like a switch went off, and our sessions online just basically doubled, and people were coming, left and right. And we're like, okay, so, the sales are good, but how are we going to maintain this? And I tie, social media and customer service together so much, because so many consumers funnel their questions through social media instead of going, direct to our customer service line or an email. And it really put tremendous strain on that, to be honest with you. And that was the first thing we had to figure out. How are we going to manage this? It was almost like being during the holiday time, for 2 months, really, as far as, returns or size questions or that sort of thing. So that was the most significant thing to kind of weather through. Our outside social agency just picked up and started, looking at what products were drawing the most interest and kind of feeding content toward that. So early on, it was actually rainwear for us, because it was springtime, and a lot of interest in our footwear, which quite honestly was a bit surprising, because most people, you think hook of the fishing shirts, the performance shirts. So they kind of could see that analytically and start feeding content, and then we got into a groove. And now, it is, from a direct standpoint, it is slowing down because the retailers are open, and we're kind of seeing now the orders coming from retailers, to fill their stores where they've sold through. So
well, that kind of leads kind of with the same question. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna say, now it's getting back to like the pre-COVID of the balance between your direct business and your retail partners. So.
Yeah. And one thing that this whole COVID situation has taught us, and Christine, this would be a perfect question for you, is with that crisis management, how important is it to have a flow, a crisis management flow for not only a brand, but you deal at Pure Fishing, multiple brands. How important is that to have that communication during the crisis?
It's so extremely critical to really keep your business healthy and successful, and to keep your dealers happy and your end consumers happy. It's so beyond critical to be nimble and to be quick and to be smart and thoughtful about the decisions you make in pandemic mode, right? None of us thought we'd be facing a pandemic in 2020. I think one of the biggest lessons that my team personally learned from a content side and social side is how to be creative, right? And how to think outside the box and be flexible. So for example, I produce a good portion of our really high-end quality content that deals with production crews. All of that stopped for the year, right? But we still had deliverables and product launches for July that we had to get done. So how are we able to utilize our internal resources and think outside the box to still deliver on what we need to drive the business? Additionally, we actually saw it as, I hate to call it opportunity because it is a very tragic thing that we're dealing with, but it was an opportunity to reach our consumers and create something meaningful for them, and to keep them inspired, and to keep them engaged, and to, keep that spark going in them, because it is a really heavy time, and we have that privilege and that responsibility to work in a sport that's all about passion. So how do we keep that passion alive in such a weird time? And what we came up with was a Fish Through It campaign that I don't know if everybody saw or not, and it was a really nice balance and mixture of prepackaged content that was really inspirational. It was challenges, it was giveaways, it was ways that people could interact and still do fishing challenges, but from the safety of their home. And we saw tremendous numbers from it, right? We had like over 41 million impressions on Facebook, 117 million on Instagram. So it really worked, right? So in my mind, it's like we're checking that box of still being able to interact with our consumers and give them what they're still craving, right? Which is a fishing experience, even during a challenging time. So, there's two sides of it. There's the side that you focus more on the nitty gritty business side, right? So to really echo what you were saying, Pete, we had to ramp up our community management tenfold, right? We had never seen anything like that before, even during holiday. So there's the nitty gritty business side of how to manage your social channels and your content strategy. But there's also that really silver lining of being able to flex that creative muscle and say, like, okay, what are some sweet spots, and what is our audience needing right now to help them through this hard time, and can we provide that for them?
Yeah, and that makes sense, because your audience is looking at you to be a leader in this, just like all of our brands in each respective category. The audience looks at us to be leaders in it, whether it be during through a crisis, or doing conservation efforts, or like you were saying, a campaign out there. And William over at PowerPole, I know you guys probably get as much customer interaction as the rest of us online. How has it been through this crisis in there? And explain the importance of being able to respond to a customer quickly, because in today's world, everybody wants that instant gratification. How do you guys do it over at PowerPole?
So I feel like we were pretty ready for this, because about 2 years ago, I went ahead and I took the entire social media department 100% remote. So from like a physical perspective, we were already ready to not be in office and that kind of thing. So from our like office time and everything, it just like kept flowing. So there was never like a hiccup that like happened when the like stay-at-home orders hit and everything. From an actual like content perspective, PowerPole really leans into user-generated content. I'm going to steal from one of your upcoming questions. User-generated content is like the backbone of PowerPole's social media channel, and is something that we really, really lean into. So when everybody started staying at home and all these people started fishing a lot more because they weren't necessarily going into an office, we saw our user-generated content go through the roof. And that was something that I took the opportunity to go ahead and like really lean into it, because we had way more content than we would typically have on like a random Tuesday. Because random Tuesday, we would usually get a handful of tags. Now we're getting like 100 tags on a Tuesday, which was huge for us. So we went ahead and we would line up a lot more posting that was going on, just to lean into the community that was being out on the water a lot more.
Yeah, and we use a lot of user-generated content as well too at Yamaha, and just like you said, I know just following your brand on my personal social pages as well as Yamaha stuff, a lot of what you and I do, we have a lot of the same thinking when it comes to some of the trends out there and everything. When it comes to the user-generated content side, and this will kind of help with my next question going into here, is the slowdown of organic reach. Do you think using user-generated content can help offset the organic reach? Because everybody watching live, and they'll watch this later, if you manage a brand's page and you've been doing it for a number of years, you've seen your organic reach just completely go down. Mark Zuckerberg and the folks at Facebook and Instagram, they all want to pay their bills too. So talk a little bit about the sourcing of the organic content, William, and then how has that helped your reach?
The best way that I know to generate user generated content is to really lean into your community. If you are engaging with those that, even just the people that comment on your photos, if you're engaging with them talking about your product, the next time they go out on the water, they're going to be thinking about that interaction, and they're more likely to snap a pic of the back of their boat with their motor and their anchors going on. So I think that communication in there is really important for gaining more traction with user-generated content. In terms of organic going down, we've kind of just taken an approach of increasing the opportunities for organic interaction. So whereas last year we tried to have at least a single post every single day, so we're looking at 365 pieces of content. Now this year we're up above 400 pieces of content that we're trying to produce this year. So that automatically gives you more opportunity for organic interaction, and therefore our organic impressions are still trending upward, even though the industry is trending downward. And
your content you still have a focus on quality rather than pushing out a quantity just to hit that 400 number or anything, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at the job of a social media strategist as one of, you have to have aspects of content creation, like physically being responsible for the content creation. But I'm seeing more and more of a trend of this role being defined as content curation. Mm-hmm. So you're a curator of content. I think of, this is kind of poshy, but like I think of like a museum guy that like builds the content in a museum. That's what you're doing for your brand. You are curating the best content in your community to display your brand.
Almost as a content manager.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're definitely managing the content that comes in, and then it is my responsibility to make sure that it is curated and we are presenting the best content forward. And that's something that's really cool. As you gain more and more traction with user-generated content, you have the opportunity to be more selective with what comes through. Because if you're trying to put 400 pieces of content on the internet over a year, and you have 1,000 pieces coming in, you don't have to post every single picture that you get tagged in. So you have more opportunity to be selective through that.
Exactly. And Steve, over at Garmin, you guys have, obviously, again, everybody on this panel, I follow all your pages and the user-generated content that comes out of Garmin. You guys have so many different electronics, so many different ways to present that. Talk to us a little bit about how that's played into your strategy.
Yeah, we actually run. Well, I'm not quite sure now, but we probably have a lot of different channels that we run, because we'll run a fish hunt channel, we'll run a fitness channel, we'll just run a Garmin channel, we have an aviation channel, and then we even have a Garmin Marine, which is a little bit more saltwater focused. So we treat each one of those differently, just because we're talking to different consumers. Even just on the marine side, we have Garmin Marine, which is more offshore, and then Garmin Fish Hunt, which we kind of the cast and blast, if you will, channel. But we do work, we engage a lot with different ambassadors just for content type stuff, because while we do want to just, have the beauty and that experience, we also want to see somebody that's got the Garmin units on their boat. And a lot of times you can, work with people that you find have, love your brand. And as I think William said, there's people that want to help you and you can engage with them. And sometimes, it's amazing what a t-shirt can get you, or, even just giving a guy a little discount on a unit. If he's a good photographer, you can really get some great content that they can send back that, we can in turn then utilize. But, we do look at that quite a bit. We, to your question about, just with the organic reach, it is tough. And I think that, the nice part is that, based on some of your ambassadors, if you use, you've got maybe some more, I'll call them kind of the grassroots ambassadors, and you've got more of your pros that, they can certainly help extend some of your reach. You can also, we boost a lot of our organic posts that we do, just because we don't have, if you just put even, a few $100s behind a post, it's amazing the difference you get in the reach of that campaign versus just trying to rely 100% on organic. So,
and plus your analytics too help with the.
Oh yeah, analytics are, and there's, I don't know how everybody does it, but we don't boost every post that we do. But if we don't boost a post, we know we're not going to just get near the analytics or the reach that we do. So, but we do have a lot of content that we put out, and we don't boost everything, and that's kind of on purpose. But our internal arguments that if we're doing anything organically, that we should be boosting it, because we just don't have the reach, which is a fair question and comment on a lot of lines too. So.
And I think every brand has that, is, you could hypothetically spend money on every single post and every bit of content you put out there. And Pete, I'll put this one to you guys right there. Being an apparel brand, you guys do run paid ads and you do organic stuff. I don't know if the group knows this or the whole knows this. Nike has not posted an organic post since 2018. You can go look on their Facebook post. They do nothing but paid advertising on their social media, and strategy is all a little bit different for everybody. And Pete, talk to us a little bit about your paid efforts versus your organic efforts.
Okay. It's a mixture of both. The paid ad strategy allows us to basically geo-target multiple offerings. We can hit one area of the country with footwear ads. We can hit another area or another, demographic per se with outerwear. That we have two groups, by the way. One group does, our paid direct strategy, and then another group does our organic strategy. So the paid ads are usually based around, a seasonal approach of the assortment, and like I said, it's kind of demographic or regional. On the organic side, and everybody else on the panel stole a lot of thunder, but where we've seen success more recently is, and this is with both brands. I'm sure a lot of you know, we have a hunting brand called Nomad. We've seen tremendous success with live video broadcasts via Facebook Live, as well as kind of like watch parties, and tremendous organic reach doing that, making, building the personal relationships with the consumers through these live video. And we've done everything from talk about product or be live, fishing or hunting or right after, and hey, this is what happened, and a lot of back and forth engagement. You guys were talking about UGC earlier, and quite honestly, I think we're a little different in that area. It's not very often that we use it. We encourage them to tag us in their content. We do get a lot of content, through comments, but that's one area where we really publish more of our own, and try to keep our brand and quality, relevant. But we obviously post less, and it's kind of everything else aligns with what everybody's saying. But there's a distinct balance and different approach between paid and organic for us. And it's, I could sit here all day and talk about paid and what works and what doesn't, but it's a part of the pie that I think we have to do. In my mind, it's not the leading indicator.
Yeah. So talking about some of the tools that these platforms use, and Christine, I'll start with you first on this one. Taking the platforms and putting them, all side by side with each other, are you putting the same content on all of your platforms, or are you changing up your content per day and posting different stuff on each of the platforms? Over at Yamaha, we tend to post a lot of the same content on all of our platforms. We're heavy in organic, and with that, if you follow us on Facebook and Instagram, chances of you seeing both of our organic posts are very slim. Talk to us a little bit about your brand's approach on content distribution.
Sure. So all channels are not created equal, right? And your audience that you're going to be experiencing your feeds with on Facebook is very different than someone you would experience on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or Snapchat, whatever platform you're interacting with. It's definitely an objective of us to dial that in even more. It always comes back to resources and prioritization. But, at the end of the day, content is king, and your channels are only as good as the content that you're putting out there. And your content is only as good as what your audience is identifying with. And your Facebook audience is going to be very different than your Instagram audience, not only with age and demographic and regionality, but also with what type of content they interact with, right? So for example, if Facebook is skewing slightly older and they want news-related articles, you'd be better pushing out educational blogs to them compared to Instagram, which people's attention spans or watch times might be 3 to 5 seconds, where you just need a really high-impact sizzle video for them. So I do think it's really, really imperative that every brand gets to know their audiences intimately across the different channels, and then that will help dictate your content strategy and your social strategy, both from a paid and organic standpoint. Similar to how you were describing your organization, Pete, that's what we do. We carve it off in 2 separate different strategies. Organic's really to drive home the brand voice and the brand story, keeping it really heavily under our control, not so much a lot of user-generated content, compared to paid, which is a whole different geo-targeted, really structured and really just a really fine eye of what you're serving to who, right? So there's 2 different kind of sections there that we approach it, and that's not only in general from paid and organic, but per channel as well, compared to like Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. Question for you and your brand: are you guys on TikTok?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't get in a hurry to get on that right now from what it sounds like, but it's always good to find out what brands are on what. Well, we secured our at Yamaha, we secured our Snapchat name day before Instagram stories debuted. So with Instagram stories coming in, it kind of made Snapchat for our brand a little bit of as not relevant as there. William over at PowerPole, how are you guys with your distribution across your?
We definitely take a similar mentality to what you were describing with Yamaha.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely have this core of content that is duplicated across platforms. Then from there, we try to lean into some more content that's specific to the channel. So, for example, like with our Instagram, when you think about Instagram posting, when you think about Facebook posting, Twitter posting, there's like a standard post that can be the same across all of them. And it needs to be optimized, but not anything crazy different between those posts. But then you have Instagram story, and that's like a very specific piece of content. And then with Facebook likes to lean into video a lot more. So we do like a lot more video oriented stuff on Facebook. And then Twitter, we do a lot more retweeting, more conversational based posting. So the core is the same across them, but then we take an opportunity to do more posting on each channel from there.
And with a lot of those tools, obviously, stories. I'm sure all the panelists agree. Stories have been, one of the bigger and I guess the newer trends ways of reaching those customers. Steve over at Garmin, talk to us a little bit about how you've used some of the tools to incorporate some of your products.
Yeah, we've, the two main mediums we use are Facebook and Instagram predominantly. We probably like you aren't in a hurry to get on TikTok just right away, but at the same time, it's, the TikTok reaches a younger audience with, all my kids play it and it's young music. And I don't know if we just don't want to do something that the brand can't live up to in terms of what that audience is expecting. So we're not ready for that medium just yet. But when it comes to Facebook and Instagram, we're probably like most other companies. We use a lot of the same content on both channels. We do change it up from time to time. We'll add a little bit extra posting on Instagram than maybe what we'll do on Facebook. We get a lot more interactions on Instagram over Facebook, but I think that's just probably leads to the nature of that audience, just being a little bit younger audience. They engage with brands a little bit more than maybe what they do with the Facebook brand overall. But yeah,
Are you seeing more click-throughs on Facebook than you are through Instagram?
We're seeing more. That's a great question that I have to look up because I don't know that answer right off the top of my head. I know we see a lot more engagements on Instagram than Facebook. The actual click-throughs, I need to go look at that data specifically because I can't remember.
Just a question that popped up in my head and everything. It always depends on your campaign and what you're trying to put out there and what your call to action really is.
Yeah, no, and one of the things that and I know there was comments earlier about the paid and organic when talking to Pete that the one thing that we do see, our click-through rates a lot of times go up with paid campaigns over the organic just by putting that buy button or that shop now button, whether you buy it or not. It's something that encourages consumers to go to the website. And as I said earlier, that's one of the main things that's all we're trying to do is to get you onto Garmin.com. But outside of, obviously, we want to engage with you. And, during the pandemic, everybody was just hungry for content because, I know we're still in the pandemic, but at least early on when we were all quarantined, we couldn't go to retail stores. We were hungry for content. And so we even pivoted with some of our strategies of giving more content. We introduced webinars, doing them. We were doing them twice a week for a while, just on different topics to kind of satisfy, the hunger that we were getting from people all the time. So we've definitely tried to adjust as we go through and make sure that we're talking to the consumer the best way that we can, and help them get their information that they need from Garmin. So
Yeah, and especially in today's world, and this is kind of where we'll wrap up some of the questions, and I'll pose this question to everybody, give everybody a chance to opportunity to answer it. With today's world and everybody having that instant gratification and looking to brands, there's no more picking up a telephone book anymore and trying to call a retailer as much as it is for a consumer to really directly reach out to those blue checkmark verified pages and expect an answer, a corporate type of answer. The question that I'll pose to everybody is, from our level to a mom and pop level, a smaller retailer that isn't blue checkmark verified, that doesn't have these big budgets, a lot of what we're talking about can be applied across the board, whether you're a company of hundreds of millions of dollars of sales or a company with just a couple $100,000. I'm going to ask everybody to kind of offer any tips or tricks that you could give to anybody that manages social media pages out there. And I'll start off with by saying, while you can lay out a formula and a roadmap to put your message out there, don't be afraid of living in the moments as well too. Putting the stuff that's in the moment going on at that time. If it is talking about a coronavirus situation that's going on, or on the complete opposite side, if you're talking about a specific initiative, for example, if you're fighting for red snapper and it's red snapper season, kind of keep that stuff in the moment, but don't let a brand lose an opportunity to have a voice, would be my one tip for anybody that manages a page. Steve, I'll go with you first, starting it off. What would be your tip or trick for a smaller brand?
Yeah, I think we definitely hit it. I would also be flexible. Try different things that some will be base hits. Sometimes you'll strike out, and sometimes you'll hit home runs. But you obviously need to stay authentic to who your brand is and what you are. But trying some different opportunities from time to time, you can really find what those right formulas can be. And they do change based upon, we've seen changes just in the last few months. So
yeah. Christine, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I think one strategy that could be really advantageous for smaller brands is not relying solely on your reach, right? But to tap into other tastemakers and influencers in the space and using them as a megaphone, right? Because they may already have an audience built up that is a similar audience to you. And by positioning your brand with these influencers and tastemakers, you're reaching another audience that will soon be following you, right? So it's like you can push this big rock up the hill to a certain point, but at some point you might want some help. And that's when you can really rely on outside partnerships to really help you grow your audience organically, especially if you don't have a lot of budget.
That third-party verification, that zero moment of truth, how to affect that. Yeah, exactly. And William, how about yourself? What tips or tricks would you give to a brand?
I'm coming back around to that community management, leaning into making personal connections with your community, and really trying to build brand champions for your brand. If you can enable individuals to really love your product and be vocal about your product, then kind of like what the others were saying, that then leads into them talking about it, and they turn into the megaphone for your brand from there.
Yeah, exactly. And Pete, with yourself, what tips would you give a brand in the social and digital world these days?
At first, I totally agree with what William just said. For me, it's all about being responsive and inclusive, letting them know that your brand really cares about them. But one thing I would tell, smaller companies or people that are newer to social media, there tends to be this kind of leap to the following. Don't focus on the following, focus on engagement. The following is going to come. I would rather, if you have 1 million followers and your engagement's only 20,000, it doesn't really mean anything, right? So a lot of people really get hung up on building the following. I would say focus on the engagement. The following will come. They become your brand advocates. They build the following for you. And I see a lot of brands that really want to brag, and show these big numbers of following. But then I always ask, what's your engagement?
Yeah.
Rather much higher engagement rate than following.
Exactly. And in today's social world, it's not the social world it was even 4 or 5 years ago, where you could find a page that has, 1 million followers, but then it only has 1,000 likes and 4 comments on it. It's kind of easier to see that nowadays. So authenticity, I would agree, would be, one of the big things. So first off, before we open it, thank you guys for all joining. And now we've got a few minutes before the end of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to everybody in the audience to unmute themselves, or if I can figure out how to unmute everybody as well too. If you're here, you can go ahead and ask any questions you'd like to any of the whole panel or any of the panel members. Hang on, I'm hitting the wrong buttons here. I believe I unmuted everybody. All right. Go ahead. You guys have a question? Somebody joined on. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, let me check over here in the conversation area. We'll go ahead and say thank you to everybody, Steve, Christine, William, and Pete. I appreciate you guys joining us. This iCast was a little bit different.
Brad, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So when you guys are choosing who you feel would be a best fit for your brand to be an influencer, being Facebook, Instagram, what do you use to vet that type of person to see if they fit your brand's needs?
The question was, what kind of vetting process do we do for user-generated content? I'll start it off with the Yamaha side of things. Typically, what we'll do is, do a public search on the profile pages, see, who they have, what kind of following they have. One of the easiest ways to do it, I do it, is the mutual friends you have in common, or look at the people that are engaging with their page. Traditionally, if you're finding somebody that is going to represent your brand, chances are there's other like-minded people that follow them. And don't be afraid to reach out to your network as well too. I'll now open it up to the panelists.
Exactly. Also, if it's more of a professional, angler or captain, this in some ways is a small industry. So we tend to, talk to other captains in the region, make sure that, people have a good reputation. But like you said, you can generally find somebody that can find somebody that knows them. So, and then we also have, for us, we have an outside party that does a lot of that, just vetting, influencers and kind of checking them out before we even, talk to them.
I also think that it comes back to what P was saying too. If you're looking at more like the analytics behind trying to pull an influencer in, exactly what P was saying, it's more about their engagement and their interactions and their following base. And a lot of influencers will try and push their following base to you. They'll say, I got X amount of followers, but that's a lot less relevant compared to the amount of engagement that they're being able to pull on their channel.
Yeah, I'd agree. Christine?
Sure. So we handle it in a couple different ways. There's different buckets of what we quote unquote call influencers, right? There's user generated content, which we don't rely as heavily on. We kind of pick through and use what we find is applicable. When we're going after someone that we really deem an influencer, right? And we want them to be a really big spokesperson, usually a contract is involved with payment and with product. We go through a number of vettings, and it's really taking a really hands-on approach to see who they are, who they're about, and most importantly, I cannot say this enough, they probably work with other companies as well, and tapping into your resources at those companies to see what they have to say about them before you start engaging with them is really, really important, right? We work in an industry that's very, very relationship based and surprisingly small for how big it is. So more than likely, you can probably get a recommendation on somebody.
I always call it the Kentucky family tree, and not to offend anybody from Kentucky or anything, but yeah, it's definitely there, and a lot of that is the opportunities to is to use the user generated content. Those people that we were talking about before, we're getting some questions from them talking about engagement, that type of stuff. Looking at the user's engagement, and as well too, making sure that it's right engagement. Making sure it's the right followers following it, and you don't have a bunch of pages, following it right there. So hopefully those are some tips. Steve, do you have any other tips on getting more engagement?
Especially when you're using ambassadors, what I would look at is look at how they represent other brands, and if that's ways that you want them to represent your company. So I don't know how many people that I've seen that have amazing engagements and huge followings, but I never see them highlight the products in any sponsored products in the right way. And that's just not going to be, at least for our brand, it's not right. And not that I want people to, just throw up on a product when they do endorsements, because we can see through that. But I do want them to, if they're out fishing, I want to see a picture of a power pole in the background if I'm power pole, or I want to see a, Garmin electronics on the dash. And just, whether it's reference to it or just that experience, but as long as they're representing others, it's good. In terms of getting more engagements, I don't know that I have the right solution right offhand for that, but I think that's part of that experimentation of just trying different things to get it. That a lot of times we lean towards sweepstakes, but I think those are the wrong engagements to do a lot of times, of giving away product, because then you get everybody that just wants something for free, and that's not necessarily the audience we're looking for.
Yeah, one of the ways that you can always get better engagement is just simply, if you have the time, and if you do, God bless you, is the opportunity to reply and engage with every single comment that comes in on your post. If you do that for a brand, you're going to naturally raise your organic rate because you're engaging into that and everything. So that was one of the questions we had. We've got another question coming in from Jerry asking, and this is for the whole panel. Do any of us ever use social media followers to survey for customer feedback or data? And if so, has it been helpful? And I'll start off with saying we've never really done a social media survey per se. What we've kind of done is we've kind of piggybacked a little bit on what you were saying, Steve, is doing some kind of giveaways or something, and then encouraging them to go fill something out to get some data points, whatever data points we're trying to capture with that and everything. That's kind of really the only thing that we've done on our side to try to get a lot of the feedback, because quite frankly, if you want feedback on social media, you can go and read some of the comments and everything on there. So we do informal posts.
Yeah, we've done some things in a fun way, whether it be a naming convention or maybe a new logo or a design, like which do you like better, A or B, that type of thing, and try to make it fun. We haven't done any really, deep consumer insights via social media. We do, however, through our influencers and some, people that have become pretty strong advocates of the brand, will send out kits from time to time of new products to test and get their feedback.
William, how about you guys over at PowerPole?
Lean more into our pro staff for surveying, especially on like product design and product development. In terms of social, I don't feel like we necessarily reach out like a whole lot and survey them. We usually just use the analytics that are given us to kind of build profiles of who we're working with.
And Christine?
Yeah, very similar to Mr. Bean over there. We typically rely on our captains, our pro staffers, to give us feedback when it comes to product development. And then, the type of analytics and data that you can pull from your own channels is pretty astounding if you want to get to know your audience better. You have those tools at your disposal and you don't need any third-party platforms for it. One thing that I do think is really, really nice about paying attention to what your audience is saying and interacting, you can find pain points in your product pretty quickly, or you can also find areas of improvement that you can share over to your engineer teams and your product development teams. So although we may not be doing official surveys, we always like to keep our ear to the ground to see if there is a reoccurring problem or issue that we're experiencing in equipment that we can share over for improvements and new iterations.
Yeah, social listening, basically. Is the big tool on that one. Yeah, we've got another question coming in here. Ryan has chimed in and says, someone that started out as independent installer of marine electronics and accessories, I just got into the sales aspect. What are some good ways to build an audience on a larger level? Well, that's the magic question always in social. And then a second follow-up question is, my main focus is still installation and service. I'm looking to build my brand. Do you have any recommendations? Thank you. My recommendation, Ryan, would be your biggest cheerleader. Be your biggest advocate out there. Show off your quality work. Let your work speak for itself. And to kind of piggyback off what the whole panel has said, is the opportunity to, really grow your audience. And I know you want to grow it in a large scale, but I would say grow it in a scale that's relevant. Because if you have 100 people that are the ones that are spending the money in the direct audience, those are the ones that you want to have engagement with versus having thousands and thousands. And since he asked about marine electronics, I'll throw it over to our marine electronics expert on the panel, Steve.
Yeah, well, I think, and somebody even said it earlier, that you'd rather have quality people that are engaged versus the million people followers type stuff. So when you talk about that in a big way, I love Brad's suggestion of when you post, show completed work of, wow, look at the helm on this boat and just the quality with it. Even take pictures of you and every customer that you do electronics for and post it up there, and ask them to give you some positive reviews type stuff of that will eventually kind of go on. And I would definitely interact. I think William said it several times, just interact with different people that you work with on social and like those guys, because if you do one boat for Brad's got 5 other buddies that also own boats that are eventually going to need installations done. And by you interacting with Brad and becoming a friend with Brad, you're going to become friends with everybody that Brad's friends at the same time. So
it's that third-party endorsement we were just talking about in a different one. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not totally familiar with Ryan's business, but knowing some others that work in service related, channels, especially to the outdoors, I would recommend you really focus a lot on YouTube. And like Brad said, be a cheerleader for yourself, but make some YouTube videos. If you're trying to sell your installation skills or whatever, show some past jobs, what you did and that sort of thing. I know a lot of guys in land management and real estate, they do this stuff all the time, and it seems to work well for them. So I would encourage you to look in building your YouTube platform.
That's a good point.
I'll say too, I think dealers have a really great position, especially for the way that I look at dealers from like the PowerPole channel. I mentioned earlier how PowerPole really leans into our dealer network and installation. So as an installer dealer, you're positioned directly in between a product and a brand in the consumer, and you get to take advantage of both sides of that spectrum. So you can lean into your products and you can talk about PowerPole, Yamaha, and Garmin, all these different brands that you are either selling or you are installing, but then you also get the very personal side of like the customer interaction, and you get to lean into those personal relationships, kind of like what Brad was saying. If you do an installation for him and you like knock it out of the park, you have the opportunity to have that individual become your brand champion, like I was talking about earlier. And he's got 10 buddies that he can bring into your business, and that drives that end goal of increasing your sales right there. So I would say,
not to mention you get that user generated content too that we were just talking about.
exactly. And even if the user's not generating the content, you can lean into generating that content too, which is something that Steve was talking about. You can lean into maybe some sort of like testimonial style, that you do this installation for this guy, you let him take it out for a week, and you encourage him to come back by, and you do a YouTube video of him talking about the customer talking about your installation and what they think you did for them. There's a lot of potential for different things to do specifically positioned as a dealer installer. I'll give an example if you're wanting to look at somebody. There's one of our dealers just went ahead and named herself Power Pole Kate because she specializes in power pole installations on boats, and she has walked a very perfect line of very much engaging with us power pole, and then also engaging really hard with her customers and leaning into that. So that's an example if you wanted to go.
She's the expert in her circle.
Exactly.
Just like Ryan's going to be the expert in his circle and everything. So
exactly.
The next question that's come up, and Christine, I'll start with you. What's next for social media in 2021 and beyond? I know this is a loaded question for all of us, but what do we think is next, especially in the marine and fishing industry?
Right. If I had the answer to that, I would probably be a lot richer than I am right now. But I do think what's important is doing your research and staying on top of trends. For example, TikTok is a really different and new platform that you're seeing more and more brands engage on from a paid perspective, and running a lot more challenges and paid campaigns and seeing that work for them. So I think keeping your eyes on that to see what's going to actually happen with that particular platform. The nature of social media, it's really hard to predict unless you're not in the heart of the development teams and circles and networks, right? So like, for example, Snapchat kind of came and went for brands, right? I don't know if anyone remembers Vine. That was like a thing for a hot second. So we may not be able to
Vine
predict.
The original TikTok?
It was.
Yeah.
Yep, it absolutely was. So, it's really hard to predict what's next for 2021. I would definitely keep your eyes on TikTok. I don't know if it's going anywhere, right? And then I would focus on what's tried and true for your company, right? A great example is YouTube. Like, YouTube is a proven platform that is a very active user. It's not a passive user. So it's someone that's actually going out and seeking content, and that's not a platform that's going anywhere. So I think focusing on tried and true platforms that are hopefully going to stick around, and then paying attention to what's coming up in the space from that perspective. Now, when we're looking at our industry, I think there's more and more apps that are coming aboard, right? Like, we have FishBrain, we have Angler. There's a lot more apps that are entering the space. So keeping your eye out for that as well. I think hopefully, as our industry is growing and more people are entering the wonderful world of fishing, I think there's going to be more apps that come out there and more platforms that come out there that brands will have an opportunity to build a voice for themselves. Fingers crossed.
All right. Steve, what are you thinking for 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, the crystal ball is a little fuzzy, but I think Christine gave some good insight of, there's looking at things that are tried and true of, YouTube, Facebook definitely are strong. There's a lot of other apps out there that FishBrain, there's a few others that are coming about that we're trying to kind of watch and judge how and what we do. At the same time, I don't want to spread ourselves too thin that we're, can't manage properly what we're doing. And that's kind of the fear a little bit of chasing every new thing that's out there and not being able to do anything well. So I just probably say, find what you can do it well, but keep monitoring the landscape, and don't try to be all things to all people, because
Yeah.
probably don't have the bandwidth.
I know exactly what you're saying because I've said this before is you're just being able to touch everything. You're not able to do the quality of what you want to do because there are so many opportunities out there and everything.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. I've got some another question. Does somebody else want to chime in on this one?
I was just gonna say, I think for our industries, fishing and hunting especially, we're gonna see social commerce expand. I think the current, situation with COVID has taken a group of people that traditionally shopped brick and mortar, had to go and touch, feel, the products, and I think they're becoming more comfortable shopping online. So I think that's going to be big for us. Also, there's a lot of talk about Instagram possibly removing likes, and that would, be hard for a brand to gauge, how things are going. So that might shift back to another platform. That's, we'll see if that happens. And then again, you've seen the trend with short duration content via, stories. I think that's going to continue to grow, whether it's, other platforms, but that short duration content, I think for 2021 especially, will still be quite popular.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about products, one of the questions that we had come in, and Pete, you'd be a good one to answer this one right here is, what's a good way to expand your audience to areas that are not familiar with your product? The example that Scott gave, we have a great East Coast audience, but relatively unknown on the West Coast of California and Oregon and Washington, etc. So how would you market and look to expand your presence in an area not familiar with the product?
Okay, well, I mean, this is something actually that we're dealing with. Hook is primarily in the beginning, especially a Southern brand, an East Coast brand. We have very little traction in the West compared to the East, and trying to focus more for us in the Midwest, the Upper Great Lakes. So the first thing we had to do is make sure we had authentic content providers and influencers out there. And, now we can geo-target those areas specifically with content and product offerings. So you kind of do what you want, where you want, but you just have to make sure you have the right players helping you. And
so you're getting a lot of UGC from that, then, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so some could be quote paid influencers, pro staffers building up, each region of the country, because it is, we're a South Carolina based company, and what we do here and the way we live our lifestyle and stuff could be drastically, different somewhere in Michigan or in California. So trying to, appeal to everyone via an authentic route. So we're currently, we're building our roster up in the West, in the Midwest more so than we ever have, because for that part of the country, we're underpenetrated.
Yeah, which makes sense and everything. And with a lot of what we've been talking about today, and everybody can kind of see it's coming full circle from whether the content creation side or the distribution side and the user generated content side. But we had another comment come in saying keeping the communications open, and influencers want to hear right from the start of the company what to expect. And one of the easiest ways for any influencer or anybody to work with another company or anything is go look at what they're putting out there on their social channels now. I get people all the time that send me content, and it's an upfront picture of our motor right in the front and center of it, where with us and the nurture marketing that we are in social media that we have with our brand voice, we want our product to be in the picture, but we don't need necessarily to be the forefront of it. We want to show the product, but we don't want to show it the NASCAR style in effect. And I'll open it up to the panel, of talking about how to work with ambassadors and how you guys get that content that you really want to use.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll even have people post multiple photos. If they want to show a close up of the marine electronic, but show that other experiential photo that brings them in. Sometimes that's what brings them in, and they can, follow up on that other stuff. But yeah, not everything has to be, to your point, just the giant motor sitting in, because that's just it's too much. But sometimes there are details of, wow, look how pretty this is, that looking on, sitting on the back of my boat, that you do want to highlight and you're proud of, and that's but really, whether it's a motor or marine electronics or anchor, we do it so we can enjoy the thing that we want to do and be able to do it reliably and do it more often. So
Yep. Well, it looks like, let me go back over here. It looks like we're out of the conversations and everything on there. I'd like to thank Steve, Pete, Christine, and William for joining myself here. I'd like to thank Liz and Glenn and everybody at ICAST for putting this on and for allowing me to be the moderator once again this year. And I appreciate everybody's time and joining us today.
Thank you, Brad.
My pleasure.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yep. Hopefully we'll see
Yeah.
everybody next year, 2021, in Orlando in person.
Fingers crossed.
We'll be there.
All right. All right, guys. We'll see everybody later.
bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.